So, what causes a person to undergo scrupulosity? Well, I think first of all, you can answer this in two different ways. Like, first of all, what leads to a bout of scruples? I think a lot of times it is like an emotional or physical stress that you're under. So it might be that you're tired. For me, like it was oftentimes that I'm tired. It might be things going on at work, things, problems with the family, just feeling lonely. Maybe some traumatic thing, like maybe somebody close to you died recently, maybe an illness. Oftentimes it's those physical and emotional stresses that kind of instigate it and get us going. And then oftentimes the spark that really lights it is something, something that you hear or you read about, oftentimes something very moralizing, something that kind of gets you thinking along a rigorous line, a sort of Pelagian line, like, like I got to do more. I'm not doing enough. I'm not perfect enough. It might even be something innocent, like maybe reading a story of a saint who did great things. And you think like, why don't I do that? Or look what he avoided. And I've done that before, and you start feeling guilty and ashamed of yourself. Or it might be like a story of a scandal, even kind of the other side of the spectrum, where, you find out about somebody you thought was really a great and holy person. And then you find out there were all kinds of things they were hiding. And you start to think, well, am I doing the same thing? Am I hiding things too? If this person could do it, who's to say that I couldn't be as deceptive, right? But what really causes it? I think those things are just triggers. What really is underlying, I think, is there's something going on in your mind where there's like a civil war, like an inner conflict in your mind, where on the one hand, you can't prove that you've committed a mortal sin. You don't have certainty, but at the same time, you kind of doubt it. You start to worry that maybe you're deceiving yourself, maybe you're tricking yourself, maybe you're mistaken, and you kind of play the game of better safe than sorry. So you side with your doubt. You side with maybe I'm just tricking myself. You side with your worry and your fear, and it just tears you apart. It just tears you apart from the inside. You're torn between two different paths to take. And ultimately, what you really want, what you crave, is certainty about your spiritual condition, about whether or not you're in right standing with God or not, whether or not you're in the life of grace, right? It might start out as an emotional thing, like you don't feel good, and so you think, well, if I don't feel right, then I'm probably not in grace. And then it might be intellectual certainty. You want to be able to prove it. You want to be able to know for sure whether you've committed a mortal sin or not. I used to wish that I had like a little indicator light that would light up if I committed a mortal sin. You just want that certainty. But why? I mean, like why do you want that certainty? Why do you need that certainty? Why do you crave it? Well, I think ultimately it's because underneath that, there's something wrong with your relationship with God. You have a certain false view of God and a sort of dysfunction in your relationship with Him. So a lot of times I see in myself and others, it's seeing God as like this cruel, exacting taskmaster. Like God is going around setting traps and then watching to see who falls for them, trying to trip us up at every turn. And that's not God. That's not God. That's definitely not God. We need to see God as a loving Father who, even if we are in mortal sin, doesn't stop loving us. In fact, is still pursuing us and trying to bring us back into a right relationship with Him. We need to think of the story of the prodigal son, and he comes running up to the father finally, and he's just about to beg to be brought back in as a slave. And before he can even get it all out, his father is hugging him and calling out for a robe and a ring and a fatted calf, and is basically already welcoming him back into the family. And that's what we have to see. But when we don't see God that way, if I see God as this cruel tyrant, this exacting taskmaster and judge who is looking at every single thing I do, like through a magnifying glass, like through a microscope, okay, to try to find something wrong, well, then it makes sense that if something goes wrong, I'm going to be a little bit worried. If I have doubts, I'm going to be worried because I don't want to get on the wrong side of that type of God. And so then I'm torn because part of me says, no, there's no problem here. But part of me says, but what if? Okay, but what if you don't want to get on the wrong side of that God and end up in hell? And so then you're torn and you can't make up your mind. Your will can't choose what to do, and your emotions get into turmoil because of that. And in time, it starts to affect your bodily health and social health and well-being as well. So what causes it? I think that's exactly what it is. What causes scruples is ultimately a wrong-headed view of God, and a dysfunctional relationship with him. We are ultimately trying to, in some way, trying to earn a relationship with God. Whether it's by what we do, by what we know, by what we say, we're trying to earn it. And because we lack a sense of being accepted, of security in God, of being loved by God. We make it all about what we're doing rather than what he has done. We're trying to make ourselves into somebody pleasing to God, when ultimately it is for God to make us pleasing to himself by giving us the gift of his grace and then transforming us so that, because of who he has made us to be, transforming us so that we are able to do what he wants us to do.